The emergency beacon pierced through the void of space like a desperate scream. Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Council's Third Fleet received the transmission while his ship patrolled the Outer Rim territories. The message was garbled, filled with static and panic, but the core information was clear enough to make his purple blood run cold. Mayday, Mayday. This is Research Station Kepler 7. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Repeat, we are under attack. Our defensive systems are failing. We have civilians aboard, including younglings from 12 different species. Please, anyone receiving this transmission, we need immediate military assistance. The transmission cut to static, then repeated on a loop. Zethkar's 4 arms worked frantically across his command console, trying to establish contact with the research station. Kepler 7 was positioned near the edge of Council space, in a sector known for its scientific importance rather than strategic value. The station housed some of the galaxy's brightest minds, working on projects that could benefit all civilized species. Navigation: set course for Kepler 7, maximum velocity. Zethkar commanded, his mandibles clicking with urgency. Communications: send out a general distress call to all Council vessels in the sector. We need backup. His communications officer, a 6-limbed arachnoid named Veltar, worked quickly at her station. Sir, I'm detecting minimal Council presence in that region. The nearest fleet is at least 4 standard days away at maximum speed. We have 1 patrol ship that could reach us in 2 days, but that's all. Zethkar's heart sank. His ship, the Harmony's Edge, was well-equipped but designed for patrol duties, not full-scale combat. If the attackers were strong enough to threaten a heavily shielded research station, his single vessel might not be enough. Sir, Veltar continued, her voice carrying an odd tone, there is 1 ship that responded to our general distress call. They're already en route to Kepler 7 and should arrive several hours before us. Excellent. Which fleet are they from? Veltar paused, checking her instruments twice. Sir, according to their response, they're from Earth. They identify themselves as the UES Retribution, human military vessel. The bridge fell silent. Every member of Zethkar's crew turned to look at their commander, expressions ranging from confusion to concern. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only a few decades ago. Most species considered them curious but unremarkable, perhaps useful for their adaptability, but hardly a military force to be reckoned with. Humans, Zethkar repeated, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Are you certain? Yes, sir. They've transmitted their credentials. UES Retribution, commanded by Captain Sarachun. They're listed as a heavy assault vessel in their classification system. Zethkar had never heard of a human heavy assault vessel. In fact, he wasn't aware that humans had any significant military presence in Council space. They were known more for their exploratory missions and trade endeavors. Very well, he decided. Send them our thanks, and inform them we'll provide support as soon as we arrive. Also, patch me through to Council intelligence. I want to know everything about this human vessel. As the Harmony's Edge accelerated through space, pushing its engines to their limits, Zethkar received a data package about humanity and their military capabilities. What he read made him increasingly uncomfortable. Humans, according to the files, came from what galactic standards classified as a death world, a planet so hostile that it seemed impossible for intelligent life to evolve there. Earth's gravity was nearly twice that of most inhabited worlds. Its atmosphere was filled with a highly reactive gas that would be toxic to many species, and its weather patterns were described as catastrophically violent. The psychological profiles were even more disturbing. Humans were noted for their persistence, their refusal to surrender even in hopeless situations, and their tendency to form emotional bonds that they would defend with their lives. The files mentioned something called pack bonding, where humans would apparently adopt almost any other creature as family and protect it with fierce loyalty. Most concerning were the military reports. Human conflicts, even before they achieved space travel, were noted for their brutality and scale. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over, yet somehow managed not to use them. Their approach to warfare was described as overwhelmingly aggressive and tactically unpredictable. "Sir," his science officer interrupted his reading, "we're receiving another transmission from Kepler 7. The signal is stronger now. Put it through." Dr. Yontel's voice filled the bridge, strained but more controlled than the earlier panic. "Any council vessels responding? This is Dr. Yontel, station commander of Kepler 7. Our situation has deteriorated rapidly. The attackers have breached our outer hull in 3 locations. We've retreated to the central core, but our shields won't hold much longer. We have 143 souls aboard, including 22 younglings. Please, we need help now." "This is Commander Zethkar of the Harmony's Edge." Zethkar responded immediately. "We are en route, but still several hours away. However, a human vessel is closer and should reach you soon. Prepare for possible evacuation procedures." There was a pause before Dr. Yontel responded. "Did you say human?" Thank you, Commander. Any help is appreciated." Kepler 7 out. The next few hours passed in tense silence aboard the Harmony's Edge. Regular updates from Kepler 7 painted an increasingly dire picture. The attackers appear to be pirates, but unusually well-equipped ones. They had multiple ships and weapons technology that rivaled Council military standards. The research station's defensive systems were failing one by one. Then, suddenly, Dr. Yontel's voice crackled over the communications system again, but this time with a completely different tone. "Commander Zethkar, this is Kepler 7. The human vessel has arrived. I think you should hear this." What came next was a recording of the communications exchange between Kepler 7 and the UES Retribution. Captain Sarah Chen's voice was calm, almost conversational, as she spoke. "Kepler 7, this is Captain Chun of the UES Retribution. We understand you have uninvited guests causing trouble. We're here to remove them. Please maintain position in your core and keep your heads down. This might get a bit noisy." "Captain Chun," Dr. Yontel's voice could be heard responding, "we appreciate your assistance, but I should warn you, there are at least 6 pirate vessels out here, all heavily armed. Your ship appears to be alone." There was what sounded like soft laughter from the human captain. "Doc, where I come from, we have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Don't worry about us. We're about to show these pirates what happens when you threaten civilians." The recording cut out, and Dr. Yontel came back on live. "Commander Zethkar, what happened next was, I'm not sure how to describe it. Perhaps you should see for yourself when you arrive." "What's the situation now?" Zethkar asked. "The pirate vessels are gone. All of them. The human ship is requesting permission to dock and provide medical assistance." "Commander, their vessel is massive. I've never seen anything like it. And their crew, Dr. Yantil Pausit. When they speak, they sound like they're discussing the weather, not a space battle. How is that possible?" Zethkar felt a chill run through his body. 6 pirate vessels, eliminated by a single human ship in what appeared to be minutes. Either this Captain Chun was lying about being alone, or human military capabilities were far beyond what the Council had estimated. "We'll be there in 2 hours, Kepler 7. Maintain position and cooperate fully with the human crew." As the Harmony's Edge continued its journey, Zethkar found himself both eager and dreading to see what awaited them at Kepler 7. The galaxy, suddenly, seemed like a much more complex place than it had been that morning. His tactical officer, a methodical crystalline named Hexmore, approached his command chair. "Sir, I've been analyzing the scan data we're receiving from Kepler 7. The debris field where the pirate ships were destroyed is extensive. Whatever weapons the human vessel used, they were extraordinarily powerful." "How powerful?" "Sir, based on the debris patterns and energy residue, I estimate that each pirate ship was destroyed by a single weapon impact. The energy output required for such destruction would typically require a dreadnought-class vessel or a coordinated attack by multiple smaller ships." Zethkar stared at the tactical display, trying to process this information. Single impacts. 6 ships. 1 human vessel. Hexmore, pull up everything we have on human military doctrine. I want to understand what we're dealing with. The files that appeared on his screen were sparse, but disturbing. Human military history was filled with conflicts that seemed to escalate beyond all reason. They had fought wars that lasted years, sometimes decades, with casualty numbers that made seasoned council officers sick. Yet somehow, they had managed to unify their planet and develop space travel. What truly concerned Zethkar were the notes about human psychology in combat situations. Humans, according to the analysis, didn't just fight to win. They fought to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. They formed emotional attachments not just to their own species, but to anyone they perceived as innocent or in need of protection. The report mentioned an incident during First Contact where human explorers had encountered a slave ship operated by Zephyrian raiders. The humans had not only freed the slaves, but had tracked down the raiders' base of operations and dismantled the entire organization. When questioned about their extreme response, the human commander had simply stated, "Some things are not acceptable, regardless of species or culture." "Sir," Veltar called from her station, "we're receiving a direct transmission from the UES Retribution." "Put it through." Captain Sarah Chen's image appeared on the main screen, and Zethkar found himself studying humanity's first representative he had encountered. She appeared younger than he had expected, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of experience despite her apparent age. She wore a uniform that was practical rather than decorative, and she carried herself with a confidence that seemed unshakable. "Commander Zethkar," she said with a slight smile, "I'm Captain Shun. I wanted to update you on the situation here before you arrive." "Captain Shun, I understand you've resolved the hostile situation. Can you give me details about the attackers?" 6 vessels, Korthak Syndicate from the looks of their equipment. They were running a protection racket, demanding payment from research stations and trade outposts. When Kepler, 7 refused to pay, they decided to make an example. Chen's expression hardened slightly. They picked the wrong target. 6 vessels, Zethkar repeated. My tactical officer estimates they were destroyed by single-weapon impacts. What kind of armament does your ship carry? Chen's smile returned, but it was not entirely friendly. Commander, where I come from, we take the protection of civilians very seriously. The Retribution is equipped accordingly. I see. Are there any survivors among the attackers? The lead ship's captain and 2 crew members. They're in our medical bay being treated for injuries. They'll be turned over to council authorities for prosecution. Zethkar felt some relief that the humans had taken prisoners. It suggested they weren't simply bloodthirsty killers, despite their apparent military prowess. Captain Shun, I must ask, how many ships do you have in this sector? Just the Retribution, Commander. We were on a routine patrol when we intercepted the distress call. 1 ship. 1 human ship had eliminated 6 pirate vessels and rescued a research station. Zethkar began to suspect that the Galactic Council had seriously underestimated their newest member species. We'll be arriving soon, Captain. I look forward to meeting you in person. Likewise, Commander. Fair warning, though. My crew might seem a bit unusual compared to Council standards. Humans can be intense when it comes to protecting others. My people are still running on combat adrenaline. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar with more questions than answers. As the Harmony's edge approached Kepler, 7, he could see the massive human vessel docked with the research station. It was indeed enormous, larger than most Council cruisers, with a design that spoke of both advanced technology and brutal functionality. Debris from the 6 pirate ships littered the space around the station, some pieces still glowing from residual energy discharge. Whatever weapons the humans had used, they had been devastatingly effective. Commander DR. Yontel's voice came over the communications system. The human medical team has been extraordinary. They've treated our wounded with technology I've never seen before, and their bedside manner is surprisingly gentle for warriors. I think you should know they've been asking detailed questions about our research. Not in an invasive way, but they seemed genuinely interested in scientific advancement. As the Harmony's Edge prepared to dock with Kepler 7, Zethkar realized that the galaxy's understanding of humanity was about to change dramatically. These weren't just another spacefaring species. They were something entirely different. Something that could apparently eliminate 6 military vessels without breaking stride, then immediately shift to providing medical care and expressing interest in scientific research. The question that haunted him as his ship completed its final approach was simple. If this was what humanity sent as a single patrol ship, what would happen if they ever had to deploy their actual military? Commander Zethkar stepped aboard Kepler 7 research station with his security detail flanking him. The docking bay showed clear signs of recent combat damage, but what struck him immediately was the efficiency with which human crew members moved about, conducting repairs and assisting station personnel. They worked with a precision that spoke of extensive training, yet they smiled and spoke gently with the civilian researchers. Dr. Yontel approached, his usually pristine white for showing singes from the attack. The elderly felinoid scientist's ears were flat against his head, but his expression showed relief rather than fear. Commander Zethkar, thank the stars you're here. Though I must admit, our situation improved dramatically when Captain Chen arrived. I can see that, Zethkar replied, watching a human medic carefully bandaging the arm of a young crystalline researcher. The human's movements were gentle, patient, completely at odds with the devastating military efficiency they had supposedly displayed hours earlier. Where can I find Captain Chen? She's in our main laboratory. Fair warning, she's been asking very detailed questions about our research projects. Not prying, exactly, but she seems to understand our work better than most military officers would. Zethkar found Captain Chen standing before a holographic display, showing complex molecular structures. She was deep in conversation with Dr. Cassandra, Kepler 7's chief biochemist, a brilliant Aquarian whose water-filled containment suit bubbled softly as she spoke. The protein-folding cascade is fascinating, Chen was saying, her voice carrying genuine interest. On Earth, we've seen similar structures in extremophile organisms. Have you considered testing the compound's stability under high-pressure, high-temperature conditions? Dr. Cassandra's aquatic form pulsed with excitement. You know, we haven't. Your world's extreme environment might provide excellent test parameters. Most of our research focuses on standard habitable world conditions. Captain Chun, Zethkar interrupted gently. Chun turned, and Zethkar got his first close look at humanity's representative. She was indeed young by galactic standards, probably not even 40 standard years. Her dark eyes held an intelligence that seemed to catalog everything around her, but when she smiled, there was genuine warmth there. Commander Zethkar, thank you for responding so quickly. I know you pushed your engines hard to get here. It was our duty, Zethkar replied formally. I understand you've neutralized the threat. The immediate threat, yes. But we need to discuss the larger picture. This wasn't random piracy. It was too organized, too well-equipped. Chen gestured to a nearby console where tactical data scrolled past. These attackers had military-grade weapons and coordinated assault patterns. Someone supplied them with advanced technology. Zethkar studied the data, his discomfort growing. You believe there's a larger conspiracy? I know there is. We interrogated the surviving pirates. The Korthak Syndicate has been systematically targeting research facilities throughout this sector. They're not just stealing technology, they're looking for something specific. Dr. Yontel's ears perked up. Captain, our research here focuses on medical applications and agricultural improvements. Hardly the stuff of galactic intrigue. Chen's expression grew serious. Doctor, one of the projects listed in your station manifest involves developing enhanced healing compounds using rare minerals found only in Council space. Another involves creating enhanced food production systems that could feed populations on otherwise uninhabitable worlds. Yes, but those are humanitarian projects. Exactly. And if someone could monopolize that technology, they could control who lives and who dies across multiple star systems. That kind of power is worth killing for. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. If Chun was correct, the attack on Kepler-7 was part of a much larger threat to Council space stability. But what disturbed him more was how quickly the human had analyzed the situation and reached this conclusion. Captain, how did you determine all this so quickly? Chen's smile turned slightly grim. Commander, humans have a saying. When you're from a death world, you learn to think like a predator to survive. We've had to deal with this kind of resource warfare on Earth. The patterns are always the same. I see. And what do you recommend we do about it? Well, that depends on how serious the Council is about protecting its people. Before Zethkar could ask what she meant, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Veltar's voice crackled over his communicator. Commander, multiple hostile contacts dropping out of hyperspace. I count 12 vessels, various configurations. They're broadcasting a surrender demand. Chun was already moving toward the docking bay. Dr. Yantel, initiate full lockdown procedures. Commander, I suggest you get your ship to a safe distance. What are you planning to do? Zethkar called after her. Chun paused at the airlock leading to her ship. Why do best, Commander? Protect civilians. Zethkar followed her aboard the UES Retribution, and what he saw made him stop dead in his tracks. The human vessel's interior was unlike anything in the Council fleet. The corridors were wider than necessary, the walls lined with what appeared to be weapon storage compartments. Crew members moved with a purposefulness that spoke of extensive combat experience, but their equipment and uniforms were immaculate. What truly shocked him was the diversity of the crew. While most were human, he spotted at least 3 other species among them, all wearing the same uniform and apparently integrated fully into the human command structure. Captain, a tall human with graying hair approached them. The Harmony's Edge is requesting instructions. Tell Commander Zethkar's ship to maintain position, but be ready for emergency evacuation of station personnel if needed. Chun turned to Zethkar. Commander, you're welcome to observe from our bridge, but I should warn you, my crew operates differently than Council forces. The bridge of the Retribution was a marvel of human engineering. Multiple tactical displays showed the approaching hostile force in detail, while crew members worked with calm efficiency at their stations. What struck Zethkar most was the atmosphere. There was no panic, no shouted orders, just quiet professionalism mixed with what could only be described as predatory anticipation. Captain, a crew member reported, hostile fleet is in formation. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, 3 support vessels. They're broadcasting a message. Let's hear it. A rough voice filled the bridge, speaking accented galactic standard. Research Station Kepler-7, you have harbor technology that rightfully belongs to the Korthak Syndicate. Surrender immediately and transfer all research data, or we will destroy your station and everyone aboard. Chun looked at Zethkar. Commander, I assume the Council doesn't negotiate with pirates? Absolutely not. But, Captain, that's a significant force. Perhaps we should call for additional Council support. Chen's expression was unreadable. Commander, may I ask you something? In all your years of service, how many civilian researchers have died under your protection? The question caught Zethkar off guard. I'm proud to say that in my 15 years of command, I've never lost a civilian under my protection. Good. I've been in command for 8 years. My record is the same, 0 civilian casualties under my protection. I intend to keep it that way. Chen turned to her crew. All hands, this is the captain. We have 12 hostile vessels threatening civilians. You know the drill. Non-lethal resolution preferred, but civilian safety is absolute priority. Tactical, bring us about, and prepare for engagement. Zethkar watched in fascination as the human crew responded. There was no hesitation, no fear, just immediate action. The ship began moving with surprising grace for its size, positioning itself between the station and the approaching fleet. Captain, the tactical officer reported, all weapon systems online. Defensive screens at maximum. The hostiles are targeting us. Good. Keep their attention. Chun opened a communication channel. Korthak vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Ship Retribution. You are threatening civilians under the protection of the Galactic Council. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The pirate commander's laughter came through the speakers. Human, you are one ship against 12. Stand aside or be destroyed with the station. Chin's response was delivered in a tone that made Zeth Kar's blood run cold. I'm going to give you one more chance to reconsider. I'm human, from a death world called Earth. We don't abandon civilians, and we don't negotiate with pirates. Last warning, destroy them. The pirate fleet opened fire simultaneously, sending dozens of energy beams and missiles toward the Retribution. Zeth Kar braced for impact, certain that no single ship could survive such concentrated firepower. What happened next defied everything he thought he knew about space combat. The Retribution's defensive systems came online, and the space around the ship seemed to shimmer with energy fields. Incoming missiles simply vanished as they hit the defensive screen, while energy beams were absorbed or deflected harmlessly away. Defense holding at 98%, the tactical officer reported calmly. Return fire authorized, Captain. Fire. The human ship's weapons were unlike anything Zeth Kar had ever seen. Instead of the focused energy beams favored by Council ships, the Retribution fired what appeared to be solid projectiles at incredible velocities. The impacts on the pirate ships were devastating. Armor plating that should have withstood multiple hits from standard weapons simply disintegrated. But what truly amazed Zeth Kar was the precision. The human weapons targeted specific systems on each ship: engines, weapon arrays, command centers. Within minutes, the entire pirate fleet was disabled, drifting helplessly in space. Casualties? Chen asked. Minimal, Captain. Looks like we achieved clean disabling shots on all vessels. Chen nodded in satisfaction. Good work, everyone. Tactical, launch recovery drones. I want every survivor picked up and given medical attention. Zeth Kar stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he had just witnessed. 12 ships, all significantly larger than the Retribution individually, have been systematically disabled in less than 10 minutes. And now the humans were rescuing their attackers. Captain Chun, he said slowly, may I ask what kind of weapons your ship carries? Kinetic accelerators, mostly. We call them railguns. They fired dense metal projectiles at a significant percentage of light speed. She said it casually, as if discussing the weather. They're very effective against conventional armor and shields. And your defensive systems? Adaptive field generators. They analyze incoming threats and configure the appropriate countermeasures in real time. It's based on technology we developed for surviving Earth's environment, constant adaptation to changing threats. Zeth Kar realized his concept of human technology had been completely wrong. These weren't simple explorers with basic ships. They were the products of a world so hostile that their survival technology surpassed most military hardware in the galaxy. Captain, Dr. Yantel's voice came over the communicator from the station. Sensors are picking up something odd about the pirate fleet. Their ships are showing power signatures that don't match their apparent technology level. Chun frowned. Explain. Their weapons were generating energy outputs far beyond what their visible systems should support. It's as if someone upgraded their capabilities with technology they don't fully understand. Chun exchanged glances with her tactical officer. Commander Zeth Kar, I think we need to examine these ships more closely. Someone is arming pirates with advanced technology, and we need to know who. Agreed. What do you propose? Joint investigation. Your people are experts in council technology and protocols. My people are experts in, well, finding things that don't want to be found. Over the next several hours, mixed teams of human and council investigators swarmed over the disabled pirate vessels. What they found was disturbing. The ships had been fitted with weapons that were clearly of council origin, but modified in ways that increased their power output dramatically. The modifications were sophisticated, requiring advanced knowledge of energy systems and quantum mechanics. More troubling were the navigation logs. The pirate fleet had been supplied by a facility in the Nexus sector, a region at the border between Council and Independent space. The facility was listed as a legitimate research and development company called Hegemonic Solutions. "I know that company," Zethkar said as they reviewed the data aboard the Retribution. "They hold several Council contracts for developing new technologies. They're supposed to be completely legitimate." "Maybe on paper," Chen replied. "But their technology is showing up in the hands of pirates attacking civilian targets. That suggests either they're selling to criminals, or they're criminals using a legitimate front. What do you suggest we do?" Chen smiled, but it wasn't a particularly friendly expression. "Commander, I think it's time for an inspection visit to Hegemonic Solutions." Fortunately, humans are very good at inspections. Zethkar was beginning to understand that when Captain Chen smiled like that, someone was about to have a very bad day. He found himself wondering if the galaxy was ready for what humanity might bring to the fight against corruption and piracy. Looking at the disabled pirate fleet and the rescued civilians safely aboard Kepler-7, he decided that, ready or not, the galaxy was about to find out exactly what happened when someone threatened innocence while humans were watching. The investigation was just beginning, but Zethkar suspected that Hegemonic Solutions was about to discover why angering Deathworlders was a very poor business decision. The Nexus sector facility of Hegemonic Solutions appeared legitimate from a distance. Clean white structures dotted a carefully terraformed planetoid with orderly landing pads and what appeared to be standard research installations. Ships came and went with regular frequency, and the facility's broadcasting systems identified it as a center for advanced technology development for galactic progress. Captain Chun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying the facility through long-range sensors. Commander Zethkar stood beside her, reviewing the official documentation they had received from Council headquarters. According to these records, Zethkar said, Hegemonic Solutions has been operating here for 12 standard years. They've developed 17 different technologies currently in use by Council forces, including improved shield generators and more efficient life support systems. Impressive, Chen replied, though her tone suggested she wasn't impressed at all. What about their security profile? Standard commercial facility, light defensive systems, private security force, standard monitoring equipment. Nothing that should concern a Council inspection team. Chun turned to her tactical officer. Marcus, what do your sensors tell you? Commander Marcus Webb, a grizzled human with cybernetic implants replacing his left eye and arm, studied his console with the intensity of a predator. Captain, they're running a lot more power than a research facility should need. I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with manufacturing heavy weapons, and their defensive systems are significantly more advanced than their public specifications indicate. Underground facilities? Extensive. I'd estimate their below-ground operations are at least 5 times larger than what we can see on the surface. Zethkar felt his confidence wavering. Captain, if they're concealing the true scope of their operations, this could be a much larger threat than we anticipated. Chen nodded. Commander, I need to ask you something important. How much authority do you have to conduct inspections of Council contractors? Considerable authority, especially when investigating potential threats to civilian safety. Why do you ask? Because I'm about to teach you something about human investigative techniques. We don't just knock on the front door and ask politely. 20 minutes later, Zethkar found himself in full combat armor, following a squad of human marines through the corridors of the Retribution. He had protested initially, arguing that a diplomatic approach would be more appropriate, but Chen had shown him the analysis of the captured pirate ships. The weapons modifications weren't just advanced, they were specifically designed to overwhelm Council defensive systems. Someone with detailed knowledge of Council military technology had created weapons specifically to kill Council citizens. Diplomacy, Chen argued, was no longer the primary concern. Commander, Chun said as they prepared for deployment, human military doctrine has a simple rule when it comes to protecting civilians. Overwhelming force applied precisely prevents greater casualties later. We're not going to give them time to destroy evidence or prepare defenses. The assault shuttle that carried them to the surface was unlike any Council vehicle Zethkar had experienced. Instead of the smooth, comfortable ride typical of Council transports, the human craft was built for speed and stealth. It approached the facility at high velocity, using electronic countermeasures to avoid detection until the last possible moment. Facility control. This is Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Council conducting an emergency inspection under Section 47 of the Commercial Operations Code. Prepare to receive an inspection team immediately. The response came quickly, with just a hint of nervousness. Commander Zethkar, this is Director Felmon of Hegemonic Solutions. We weren't expecting an inspection. Can you give us a few minutes to prepare our facilities for your visit? Chun cut into the communication channel. Director Felmon, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Ship Retribution. This is an emergency inspection related to ongoing criminal activities. You have 2 minutes to unlock all facility access points, or we will unlock them ourselves. Captain Chun, I must protest. This is highly irregular. We are a legitimate business operation. Chen's voice carried the same cold tone Zethkar had heard when she addressed the pirates. Director, weapons technology from your facility was used to attack civilians 6 hours ago. The time for protests is over. You now have 1 minute and 30 seconds. The shuttle landed hard on the facility's main pad, and human Marines immediately deployed in a pattern that Zethkar recognized as tactically perfect. They moved with the smooth coordination of a pack of predators, each soldier covering specific angles and approaches while advancing toward the facility entrances. What struck Zethkar most was their silence. Council forces typically coordinated through verbal commands and obvious hand signals. The humans seemed to communicate through subtle gestures and expressions, maintaining operational security even in what appeared to be a routine inspection. Movement in the underground levels, Marcus reported through their communication system. Significant activity, suggesting document destruction or equipment removal. Chen's expression darkened. Not on my watch. Marcus, deploy penetration charges on the main underground access points. If they want to play games, we'll change the rules. Captain, Zethkar protested. Perhaps we should try diplomatic pressure first. Commander, look at your scanner. What do you see? Zethkar checked his portable sensor unit and felt his blood run cold. Energy readings throughout the facility were spiking, consistent with data destruction procedures and emergency equipment shutdowns. Hegemonic Solutions was systematically destroying evidence. You see, Chun continued, diplomacy works when both sides operate in good faith. When one side is destroying evidence of crimes against civilians, diplomacy becomes complicity. The human Marines reached the facility entrances and found them sealed with blast doors that were definitely not standard for a research facility. Chun nodded to her demolition specialist, who placed small charges on the door mechanisms with surgical precision. Breaching in 3, 2, 1, the explosions were remarkably contained, destroying the door mechanisms without causing collateral damage to the surrounding structure. The Marines flowed through the openings like water, spreading throughout the facility with practiced efficiency. What they found inside contradicted every piece of official documentation about hegemonic solutions. Instead of research laboratories, the upper levels contained sophisticated manufacturing equipment specifically designed for weapons production. Assembly lines were set up to modify existing Council technology, increasing power outputs, and removing safety restrictions that prevented weapons from causing excessive casualties. Captain, one of the Marines reported, I've got a manufacturing station here that's been producing modified plasma cannons. The modifications remove the power regulation systems and increase the plasma containment field strength. These things would cut through standard Council shields like they weren't even there. Zethkar studied the equipment with growing horror. The modifications were elegant, sophisticated, and absolutely designed to kill Council citizens as efficiently as possible. This wasn't random criminal activity. This was systematic preparation for war. Underground levels, Captain, another Marine called out. You need to see this. The elevator down to the underground facility required Chun to override multiple security systems, each more sophisticated than the last. When they finally reached the lower levels, what they found made Zethkar question everything he thought he knew about galactic politics. The underground facility was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the surface operations. Massive manufacturing bays contained equipment for producing not just weapons, but entire starships. The designs were unlike anything in Council records, incorporating advanced stealth technology and weapons systems that appeared to be several generations ahead of current galactic standards. But what truly shocked Zethkar were the species involved in the operation. "Captain Chun," he said slowly, "those aren't just random criminals. I recognize several of those individuals. They're high-ranking officials from at least 4 different Council member worlds." Chun studied the personnel they had detained, her expression growing increasingly grim. "Commander, I think we've stumbled onto something much bigger than weapon smuggling. This looks like preparation for a coup." Director Felmon, a tall reptilian creature with elaborate cranial ridges, was brought before them by 2 Marines. His earlier nervousness had been replaced by a defiant arrogance that suggested he thought he held some kind of advantage. "Captain Chun, Commander Zethkar, you have made a serious mistake. Hegemonic Solutions operates under the authority of the Galactic Development Council, which supersedes normal Council jurisdiction. You have no right to conduct this inspection." "The Galactic Development Council?" Zithgar repeated, confused. "I'm not familiar with that organization." Felmon's smile was distinctly unpleasant. "It's a special administrative body created to oversee advanced technology development. Our operations here are completely legitimate and beyond your authority to investigate." Chun exchanged glances with Zethkar. "Commander, have you ever heard of the Galactic Development Council?" "Never. And I've been briefed on every major council administrative body. So either this is a legitimate organization that's been kept secret from normal council oversight," Chun said thoughtfully, "or it a fabrication designed to provide cover for illegal operations." She turned to Felmon. "Director, I'm going to need to see your authorization documents for this Galactic Development Council. I'm afraid that information is classified above your clearance level." "Captain." Chen's smile was decidedly predatory. "Director, I should probably mention something about humans. We have a cultural characteristic that many species find disturbing. When we believe someone is lying to us, especially about something that threatens innocent lives, we become very persistent in our search for truth." She gestured to Marcus, who approached with a handheld device Zethkar didn't recognize. "This is a quantum resonance scanner. It analyzes molecular-level stress patterns to detect deception. It's remarkably accurate and completely non-invasive." Felmon's confidence wavered slightly. "You cannot use alien technology to interrogate me without proper authorization." "Actually," Chen replied, "according to Council Regulation 94, emergency circumstances allow for the use of any available technology to investigate threats to civilian safety. Since your weapons were used to attack civilians 6 hours ago, this definitely qualifies as an emergency." Marcus ran the scanner over Felmon, and the device immediately began emitting a soft alarm tone. "Captain, massive deception indicators across all his statements. The Galactic Development Council appears to be completely fictional." Chen's expression grew cold. "Director Felmon, you've been manufacturing weapons specifically designed to kill Council citizens. You've been supplying those weapons to pirates attacking civilian targets, and you've been lying about your authorization to operate this facility. That makes you a war criminal. You don't understand." Felmon's composure finally cracked. "The Council is weak, soft. They waste resources on humanitarian projects while stronger species prepare to dominate the galaxy. We're trying to strengthen Council defenses by arming pirates to attack research stations, by field testing our weapons against Council defensive systems. How else can we ensure they'll be effective against real threats?" Zethkar felt sick. "You've been using our own citizens as test subjects? Casualties in service of the greater good. The galaxy is becoming more dangerous every day." Species like the humans prove that Deathworld evolution produces superior military capabilities. The Council needs to adapt or be conquered. Chin's voice was dangerously quiet. So you decided to test your weapons by attacking civilians? We needed real-world data on how Council defensive systems would respond to our enhanced weapons. The research stations were chosen because they represented minimal loss of essential personnel while providing maximum tactical information. The casual way Felmon discussed civilian deaths as acceptable losses made Chin's expression shift into something that scared Zethkar. The human captain was clearly struggling to maintain professional composure in the face of such callous disregard for innocent life. "Director," Chun said finally, "you've just confessed a conspiracy to commit genocide. Under council law, that carries a penalty of life imprisonment. Under human law," she continued, her voice growing colder, "it carries a much more immediate penalty." "Captain Chun," Zethkar interrupted gently, recognizing that the human was approaching a dangerous emotional state. "Perhaps we should secure the facility and gather more evidence before determining appropriate responses." Chin nodded slowly, visibly pulling herself back from whatever dark thoughts had been forming. "You're right, Commander. Marcus, secure all personnel and begin downloading their databases. I want everything: operational plans, financial records, communication logs, personnel files." Over the next several hours, the scope of the conspiracy became clear. Hegemonic Solutions was part of a network of facilities throughout Council space, all supposedly conducting legitimate research while actually preparing for what appeared to be a systematic takeover of the galactic government. The plan was sophisticated and terrifying in its scope. By providing enhanced weapons to criminal organizations and then positioning themselves as the solution to increased piracy, the conspirators intended to gradually convince Council worlds that stronger military oversight was necessary. Eventually, they planned to propose a new governmental structure with themselves as the military leadership. Essentially, Chen summarized as they reviewed the evidence, they were planning to create a crisis and then offer themselves as the solution. It's a classic authoritarian takeover strategy. "How do you know so much about authoritarian tactics?" Zethkar asked. "Human history is unfortunately rich with examples. We've learned to recognize the patterns." The most disturbing discovery was the list of council officials involved in the conspiracy. High-ranking members of the military, several planetary governors, and even members of the council's administrative staff were listed as active participants. "Commander," Chun said as they prepared to depart the facility, "this information needs to reach trustworthy authorities immediately. But given how many officials are compromised, that might be more difficult than it appears. What do you suggest?" "I suggest we contact Earth directly. Human intelligence services have experience dealing with this type of widespread corruption. We can help you identify who can be trusted and develop a strategy for cleaning house." As they boarded the shuttle for the return trip to the Retribution, Zethkar found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about galactic politics and human capabilities. In less than 24 hours, a single human ship had uncovered and disrupted a conspiracy that could have destroyed the entire council government structure. "Captain Chun," he said as they prepared for departure, "I'm beginning to understand why the pirates were so concerned about fighting humans." Chin's smile was grim, but satisfied. "Commander, those pirates got off easy. They were just stealing and killing for profit. These conspirators were planning genocide for political power." She looked back at the facility where human marines were loading captured equipment and detained personnel onto transport ships. "The galaxy is about to learn that humans take a very dim view of anyone who threatens innocent lives for political gain." 3 weeks after the discovery at Hegemonic Solutions, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with tension unlike anything in their recorded history. Representatives from 47 member worlds filled the vast amphitheater, their varied forms creating a mosaic of galactic diversity. At the center podium, Captain Sarah Chun stood in her crisp human military uniform, presenting evidence that had shattered the foundation of galactic politics. Commander Zethkar sat in the Council military section, watching as species after species struggled to process the scope of the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed their civilization. The evidence was overwhelming. Detailed plans for systematic attacks on civilian targets, lists of compromised officials, and weapons specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Council defensive systems. The conspiracy involved 37 facilities across 18 star systems, Chen reported, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Combined, they had the capability to produce enough enhanced weapons to arm a fleet capable of conquering the entire Council territory. Councillor Velthara, the elderly Aquarian who served as Council Speaker, raised one of her tentacles. Captain Chun, in your professional assessment, how close did this conspiracy come to success? Chen's expression was grave. Speaker Velthara, based on their operational timeline, they were approximately 6 months away from beginning Phase 2 of their plan, simultaneous attacks on major Council installations designed to create a crisis that would justify emergency military oversight. A murmur of shock rippled through the chamber. 6 months. The entire galactic civilization had been 6 months away from a coup that would have resulted in millions of civilian casualties. Captain, Councillor Thekmon of the Crystalline Confederation spoke up, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep concern. Your forces managed to identify and neutralize this threat in a matter of weeks. How is this possible when our own intelligence services missed it entirely? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Chen glanced at Commander Zethkar, who nodded encouragingly. The truth was going to be difficult for the Council to accept, but it needed to be said. Councillor Thekmon, the honest answer is that human intelligence and military doctrine developed under different pressures than those experienced by most Council species. Earth is what we classify as a death world, and humanity evolved in an environment where the failure to detect and neutralize threats resulted in extinction. She gestured to a holographic display that showed Earth's hostile environment. Our homeworld taught us to think like both predator and prey simultaneously. We learned to identify patterns that indicate deception, to recognize when someone is planning violence, and to respond to threats with overwhelming force before they can fully develop. Councillor Monon, a tall humanoid with azure skin and intricate tattoos, leaned forward. Are you saying that the Council's peaceful nature made us vulnerable to this conspiracy? Not vulnerable, Chun corrected diplomatically, but perhaps less prepared to recognize a threat that came from within our own governmental structure. Council species developed in environments where cooperation and mutual trust were survival advantages. Humans developed in an environment where betrayal and violence were constant possibilities. And this is why your species was able to identify and stop threats that we missed. Partially. But more importantly, human military doctrine is specifically designed to protect civilian populations. When we received that distress call from Kepler-7, our response was automatic and absolute. We don't negotiate when civilians are threatened. Speaker Velthara's patterns shifted to indicate deep thought. Captain Chun, the Council faces a difficult question. This conspiracy involved high-ranking officials from multiple member worlds. Some of them were species that have been Council members for centuries. How do we prevent this from happening again? Chun was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing her words carefully. Speaker, that decision is not mine to make. However, I can tell you what Earth's government has decided. She activated another holographic display, this one showing a star map of Council space with new symbols marking various locations. The United Earth government has formally requested permission to establish permanent monitoring stations throughout Council territory. These stations would be staffed jointly by human personnel and loyal Council citizens, with the specific mission of detecting and preventing future threats to civilian populations. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives seemed relieved at the prospect of human protection, while others appeared concerned about the implications of a military presence throughout Council space. Councillor Zektar of the Reptilian Systems raised his clawed hand. Captain Chun, What assurances do we have that human forces won't eventually become the same kind of threat that hegemonic solutions represented? It was the question everyone had been thinking, but no one had wanted to ask directly. Chen seemed to have expected it. Counselor Zektar, I understand your concern. The difference is that human military culture is built around the protection of civilians, not the control of them. Our entire military structure exists to serve civilian authority, not to replace it. She gestured to Commander Zethkar. Commander Zethkar participated in our investigation and can speak to how human forces operate. Zethkar stood, feeling the weight of 47 species' attention on him. Council members, I have spent 3 weeks working directly with human military personnel. What I observed was a culture of service unlike anything in my experience. He activated his own display, showing recordings from the Hegemonic Solutions investigation. When Captain Chen's forces discovered the conspiracy, their first concern was protecting civilians. Their second concern was gathering evidence to ensure proper justice. At no point did they attempt to seize control of the situation for their own benefit. The recordings showed human Marines carefully preserving evidence, treating prisoners with respect, and working cooperatively with Council personnel. It was a stark contrast to the authoritarian methods that the conspiracy had planned to employ. More importantly, Zethkar continued, human forces consistently deferred to Council authority on all political and legal matters. They provided military expertise and protection, but specifically avoided making governmental decisions. Counselor Yithmar of the Hive Collectives buzzed softly before speaking. This suggests that humans could serve as protectors without becoming rulers. But what prevents them from changing this policy in the future? Captain Chen smiled slightly. Counselor Yithmar, that's where human psychology becomes relevant. We don't just protect other species because of duty or policy. We do it because we genuinely care about their welfare. Humans have what we call pack bonding tendencies. Once we decide that someone is under our protection, harming them becomes emotionally impossible for us. She gestured to the diverse crew members who had accompanied her to the council chambers. My ship's crew includes not just humans, but several other species who have chosen to serve alongside us. We don't see them as aliens or foreigners. We see them as family. The statement was simple, but its implications were profound. A species that could form genuine emotional bonds with other species would be incapable of the kind of systematic oppression that the conspiracy had planned. Speaker Veltharaz's patterns shifted to indicate decision. Captain Shun, if the Council approves your government's request, what would human protection actually look like? Chun activated a final holographic display, showing detailed operational plans. Joint monitoring stations staffed by human and Council personnel with advanced sensor networks capable of detecting military buildups, weapons manufacturing, and suspicious communication patterns. Rapid response forces positioned to reach any civilian population under threat within 6 hours. Most importantly, all operations would be conducted under Council oversight with full transparency. And if the Council chooses not to accept human protection, Chen's expression was respectful but firm. Then, Earth will respect your decision. However, we will maintain our current patrol patterns and continue to respond to any distress calls from civilian populations. Human nature doesn't allow us to ignore people in danger, regardless of political considerations. The implications were clear. Whether the Council formally accepted human protection or not, humanity would continue to act as guardians of civilian populations throughout the galaxy. The only question was whether this protection would be coordinated with Council authority or independent of it. Counselor Pelmaron of the Botanical Collectives rustled her leaves thoughtfully. Captain Shun, suppose we accept your proposal. What happens to the remaining members of the conspiracy? That depends on Council justice systems. However, I should mention that several of the conspirators have requested to be tried under human jurisdiction. Why would they prefer human justice? Chen's smile was not entirely pleasant. Because human justice focuses on rehabilitation and prevention rather than simple punishment. Under Council law, they face life imprisonment. Under human law, They could eventually earn redemption through service to the civilian populations they plan to harm. The concept was radical by galactic standards. Most species viewed justice as retribution for wrongdoing, but humans apparently saw it as an opportunity for the wrongdoer to make amends. Of course, Chun continued, human rehabilitation programs involve serving the victims of their crimes. The conspiracy members who choose human jurisdiction would spend decades working to repair the damage they cause to civilian populations. Speaker Velthara called for formal deliberation, and the council chamber broke into species-specific discussion groups. Zethkar found himself surrounded by military representatives from various worlds, all asking detailed questions about human capabilities and intentions. Commander, Colonel Taithris of the Avian Federation spoke quietly. In your honest assessment, do humans represent a new threat to galactic stability? Zethkar considered the question carefully. Colonel, humans represent a fundamental change in galactic power dynamics. But, based on my observations, that change is toward greater protection for civilian populations, not greater threats to them. You trust them? I've seen human forces risk their lives to protect civilians they had never met before. I've watched them treat enemies with respect and compassion. Most importantly, I've seen them consistently choose service over power. Zitkar Post. Colonel, in my opinion, the question isn't whether we can trust humans. The question is whether we can afford not to accept their help. As the deliberations continued, Captain Shun stood quietly at the center podium, waiting for the council's decision. She appeared calm, but Zethkar noticed the slight tension in her posture that suggested she understood the magnitude of what was being decided. Finally, Speaker Velthara called for order and announced the council's decision. Captain Shun, by a vote of 42-5, the Galactic Council formally accepts Earth's proposal for joint protection services. We welcome humanity as the official guardians of civilian populations throughout Council space. The chamber erupted in a mixture of applause and concerned murmuring. Chun bowed formally to the speaker. Speaker Velthara, Earth accepts this responsibility with the full understanding of its importance. Human forces will serve as protectors, not rulers, and all our actions will be guided by the principle that civilian lives are sacred. As the formal ceremony concluded and representatives began departing, Commander Zethkar approached Captain Chun. Captain, how do you feel about this responsibility? Chun looked around the chamber, watching representatives from dozens of species discussing the future with expressions ranging from hope to concern to curiosity. Commander, when I first heard that distress call from Kepler-7, I never imagined it would lead to this. But I think it's exactly what humanity is meant to do. Protect others, protect innocents, stand between predators and their prey. Make sure that being weak or peaceful doesn't make someone a victim. She smiled. Commander, humans have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We just accepted the greatest responsibility in galactic history. Any regrets? Captain Shin looked at the star map still glowing in the chamber center, showing the vast expanse of space that human forces would now help protect. None at all. This is what we're for. As they left the council chambers together, Zethkar reflected on how drastically his understanding of the galaxy had changed in just 3 weeks. When he had first received that distress call from Kepler-7, he had expected to conduct a routine rescue mission. Instead, he had witnessed the emergence of humanity as a galactic power unlike any other. The conspiracy that had threatened to destroy galactic civilization was finished. The corrupt officials were in custody, their weapons facilities dismantled, their plans exposed and neutralized. In their place stood a new reality, a galaxy protected by Deathworlders who had chosen service over conquest, protection over power. Behind them, in the council chambers, representatives from 47 worlds continued planning a future that would be shaped by humanity's unique combination of deadly capability and unwavering compassion. The galaxy had called for backup against pirates and corruption. Instead, They had found guardians who would ensure that no civilian population would ever face such threats alone again. And somewhere in space, patrol ships bearing human crews began their eternal vigil, ready to respond to any distress call with the same words that had started it all. We're here to help.